From the moment you step into someone's presence, the interaction has already begun. Even if no words have been exchanged, the subconscious exchange of information is in full swing. The human brain is designed to read and interpret subtle physical signals as a survival mechanism. Long before modern communication, body language was the primary way our ancestors assessed whether someone was friend, foe, or indifferent. This primal instinct hasn't gone away. In fact, it operates faster than conscious thought. Within the first few seconds, sometimes even milliseconds, your brain forms an impression based entirely on what you see, the way a person stands, where their eyes go, how their facial muscles sit at rest, and the speed of their movements. Posture plays a central role in this silent introduction. Someone who enters a room with shoulders rolled back, chin slightly raised, and a steady gait projects a level of self-assuredness that is instantly recognized. In contrast, hunched shoulders, a downward gaze, and small, hesitant steps can indicate discomfort or insecurity. The key to decoding these cues is to avoid the trap of judgment and instead treat them as information. Confidence in posture doesn't always mean arrogance. Just as small movements don't always mean shyness. It's the initial snapshot, a visual first impression that sets the stage for deeper interpretation. Eye behavior is another telling component in this opening moment. Direct eye contact often signals attentiveness or confidence, while quick darting glances can imply nervousness or hyper-awareness of surroundings. However, cultural norms significantly shape the meaning of eye contact. In some places, sustained eye contact is seen as respectful. In others, it may be considered aggressive or disrespectful. This is why, in reading the silent first impression, understanding the broader context matters. Still, even in different cultural frameworks, there's value in noticing whether the eyes are still or restless, warm or guarded, because these traits often hint at the emotional state beneath the surface. Facial expressions, even in a neutral position, can reveal far more than most realize. The way the lips are held slightly pressed together, curved upwards, or slightly open can indicate whether someone is relaxed, amused, or holding back a thought. Brow positioning is equally revealing. A slightly raised brow might suggest curiosity or skepticism, while a furrowed brow could hint at concentration or mild frustration. Importantly, many of these micro-signals are not intentional. They are simply natural expressions of what a person feels in the moment. That's why they are so valuable for reading authenticity. The body often betrays what the mouth won't say. Even stillness communicates. A person standing completely motionless might be signaling composure and control, or they may be freezing up out of uncertainty. This is where subtle details like breathing rhythm become relevant. A slow, even breath aligns with calmness, while shallow, rapid breathing can indicate anxiety. You may not consciously notice someone's breathing at first glance, but your subconscious does, and it shapes how you feel about them. Physical space or proxemics is another factor in the silent first impression. How close someone positions themselves to you can signal their comfort level. A person who steps in too close too soon may come across as intrusive, while someone who keeps an exaggerated distance might seem overly cautious or disengaged. The ideal reading comes from noticing the balance between their position and the environment. For instance, in a crowded setting, someone standing close might simply have no choice, while in an open area, that same distance could carry entirely different implications. Movement rhythm is another deeply telling element. Do they walk in with a smooth, steady pace or with abrupt, jerky motions? The former can suggest control, purpose, or ease. The latter might indicate nervousness, urgency, or lack of confidence. The swing of the arms, the placement of the feet, and the way the head turns while scanning the room all contribute to the subconscious story being told. The silent first impression is also influenced by congruence, whether the different elements of body language match each other. A confident stride paired with tense facial muscles sends mixed signals, creating uncertainty for the observer. Conversely, when posture, facial expression, and movement align, the impression feels authentic and consistent. People are naturally drawn to congruence because it feels trustworthy. Incongruence, even without knowing why, triggers doubt. Importantly, your own perception of someone's silent first impression is also shaped by your personal experiences, biases, and expectations. Two people can observe the same individual and come away with very different interpretations. This is why, for those who want to master reading body language, it's essential to slow down the mental rush to label someone. Instead, take in the full spectrum of visual data from the tilt of the head to the angle of the feet before arriving at a conclusion. Over time, you train your mind to collect information objectively rather than simply reinforcing what you expect to see. The most skilled observers don't just see a person. They see the story in the stance, the unspoken conversation in the eyes, and the energy in the way they hold themselves. They watch for the harmony or discord between different signals. They notice the small adjustments when someone shifts from comfort to discomfort, and they are aware of the subtle transitions that occur in the body before any words leave the mouth. Micro expressions are the body's unintentional truth tellers. They are tiny, split-second facial expressions that flash across a person's face before they have a chance to consciously control them. Usually lasting less than 1/5 of a second, they reveal genuine emotion, the raw, unfiltered feeling someone experiences in the moment. They happen because our brain's emotional center reacts faster than our logical thinking can intervene. While spoken words can be rehearsed and filtered, micro-expressions are impulsive and almost impossible to fake. This is why they are such a powerful tool for anyone seeking to understand what's really going on beneath the surface of a conversation. Imagine you ask someone a simple question, and before they respond verbally, you catch a flicker of fear, surprise, or even contempt on their face. That moment is often gone before most people notice, replaced by a more neutral or socially acceptable expression. But if you've trained yourself to spot these fleeting cues, you've just intercepted emotional truth in real time. This doesn't mean you know the full story yet, but it means you've detected a signal worth exploring further. Micro-expressions are universal. Research shows that regardless of culture, ethnicity, or language, the human face expresses 7 core emotions the same way: happiness, sadness, anger, fear, surprise, disgust, and contempt. Each has its own distinct muscle patterns. For example, genuine happiness engages both the mouth and the eyes. The corners of the lips pull upward, and tiny crinkles form at the outer corners of the eyes. In contrast, a polite or forced smile involves only the mouth, leaving the eyes unchanged. Anger shows in the lowering and drawing together of the eyebrows, while disgust crinkles the nose and raises the upper lip. Recognizing these patterns allows you to spot authenticity or inconsistency in someone's emotional display. Training to detect micro-expressions requires slowing down your perception. In daily life, our eyes are constantly moving and scanning, and we rarely focus on the subtle movements of facial muscles. One way to improve this skill is to watch slow-motion videos of real emotional reactions and then gradually increase the speed until you can spot them in real time. Another is to consciously focus on the face during conversations, particularly the area around the eyes and mouth where most micro-expressions occur. Over time, your awareness sharpens and you start catching those hidden flashes that most people overlook. However, catching a micro-expression doesn't automatically mean you've caught someone in a lie. This is where many inexperienced observers make mistakes. They treat every sign of discomfort as proof of deception. In reality, people experience a range of emotions in any interaction, and not all of them relate directly to the conversation at hand. A flash of fear could come from recalling an unrelated memory, and a momentary look of anger could be a response to an environmental distraction. This is why context is everything. Pair the micro-expression with the timing, the topic being discussed, and other body language signals to build a clearer picture. Another layer of complexity is that some individuals naturally display micro-expressions more frequently than others. Highly expressive people may leak small flashes of emotion throughout a conversation without meaning anything significant by them, while more reserved individuals might suppress most visible reactions, making the rare ones they do show more noteworthy. This is why it's critical to establish a baseline for each person's natural expressiveness before drawing conclusions. When micro-expressions align with the verbal message, they reinforce trust and authenticity. But when they conflict, it creates a moment of cognitive dissonance. The brain senses something doesn't match. This incongruence is often where hidden feelings, unspoken truths, or even attempts at deception reside. A person might verbally express agreement, but a brief flash of contempt can signal underlying resentment, or they might claim they're fine, yet a flicker of sadness reveals emotional strain. Mastering the ability to detect and interpret micro-expressions is like learning a secret code. It requires patience, practice, and an understanding that the human face is both a mask and a window. The mask is what we present to the world, shaped by social norms and self-control. The window is the involuntary truth that slips through in a fraction of a second before we can stop it. By becoming fluent in this language, you gain the ability to pick up on hidden emotions, navigate conversations more effectively, and respond in ways that address not just the words being spoken, but the reality being felt deep beneath them. One of the most common pitfalls when reading body language is jumping to conclusions too quickly. A single gesture or expression can be misleading if it's not interpreted within the broader context of the situation, the environment, and the person's unique behavioral patterns. For example, seeing someone with their arms crossed might tempt you to think they are defensive or closed off. But what if the room is cold and crossing their arms is simply a way to stay warm? Without considering the surrounding circumstances, you risk making assumptions that are not only inaccurate but potentially damaging to your understanding of the interaction. Reading body language effectively is about observing patterns rather than isolated signals. A gesture gains meaning when it's part of a cluster of behaviors that occur together or in sequence. For instance, a person leaning back in their chair while avoiding eye contact might not mean much on its own. But if that behavior is paired with a tense jaw, shallow breathing, and minimal hand movement, it begins to suggest discomfort or disengagement. Context builds the accuracy of your interpretation. Environmental factors play a significant role. Imagine you're meeting someone in a noisy, crowded cafe. They might be scanning the room frequently, not because they are distracted by you, but because they are monitoring the activity around them for safety or interest. In a quiet office setting, that same scanning might carry a completely different meaning, such as nervousness or lack of focus. The setting changes the lens through which you should view their actions. Cultural norms also heavily influence body language. Direct eye contact, for example, is often seen in some cultures as a sign of confidence and sincerity, while in others it may be interpreted as aggressive or disrespectful. Likewise, the amount of personal space a person maintains varies across cultures. A gesture that feels friendly in one culture can feel intrusive in another. This is why any accurate reading of body language requires cultural sensitivity, the understanding that your interpretation is filtered through your own background and may not match the person's intent. Baseline behavior is another key component of context. Every individual has their own default set of movements and expressions. Some people naturally speak with animated hand gestures, while others remain relatively still. Without first identifying what is normal for them, it's nearly impossible to notice meaningful deviations. For example, if someone who typically uses expansive gestures suddenly begins to keep their hands hidden under the table, that shift might indicate discomfort, reluctance, or withholding information. But if someone rarely gestures in the first place, that same behavior might mean nothing at all. Timing is also a critical part of context. When does a certain gesture or expression occur? If someone suddenly leans back right after you ask a sensitive question, the timing could suggest that the gesture is a reaction to the topic. If they lean back at random points in the conversation, the meaning might be less clear. Linking body language to specific moments helps you connect nonverbal signals to the emotions or thoughts they reflect. Another aspect is the emotional atmosphere of the moment. People behave differently when they are relaxed compared to when they are stressed, excited, or anxious. If someone appears tense, it's important to consider whether the tension stems from the conversation itself, from external pressures, or even from their physical condition. Fatigue, pain, or illness can subtly alter body language in ways that have nothing to do with the emotional state you might assume. Interpreting body language without context is like reading a single sentence from a book and believing you understand the whole plot. The words might make sense on their own, but their meaning shifts when you see them surrounded by other sentences in the flow of the story. Similarly, body language must be read as part of an ongoing narrative, shaped by the person's history, the current environment, and the flow of interaction. The skill comes from being both observant and patient. Rather than rushing to a conclusion after spotting one gesture, you collect multiple data points over time, layering them until a consistent picture emerges. You notice the clusters, the timing, the environment, the baseline, and the shifts from that baseline. You cross-check what you see with what you hear, not to confirm a bias, but to build a grounded, evidence-based understanding. This approach removes much of the guesswork and allows your reading of someone's body language to be far more reliable and accurate. Every person has a unique rhythm in how they move, speak, and express themselves physically. This natural rhythm is what's referred to as their baseline. It's the consistent default pattern of their body language when they are relaxed, comfortable, and not under any particular stress. Without knowing a person's baseline, any interpretation of their movements or expressions risks being inaccurate because you have no point of comparison. Establishing a baseline is not just helpful, it's essential if you want to read someone with precision. The process starts with observation in a neutral setting. You want to see the person when the stakes are low and when there's little reason for them to mask or alter their behavior. This could be during casual conversation, small talk, or while they're engaged in an activity they enjoy. In these moments, you note the way they stand, the gestures they use, the amount of eye contact they give, and the general tone of their voice. Do they usually speak with animated facial expressions, or is their face more reserved? Do they lean in when listening, or do they tend to stay back? Are their hands often in motion, or do they keep them still? Every one of these details becomes a part of their baseline. Once you've established this neutral standard, you can begin to identify deviations. A deviation is a noticeable change in body language that occurs in a different context, often when the conversation shifts to a topic of significance, or when the person experiences emotional or mental stress. For example, someone whose baseline is relaxed and open might suddenly cross their arms, tighten their jaw, and avoid eye contact when discussing a particular subject. Those changes don't automatically reveal the reason, but they do signal that something has shifted internally. It's important to remember that deviations can be subtle. A person who normally makes steady eye contact might break it more frequently, not for long stretches but in small, irregular moments. A normally animated speaker might begin to use fewer gestures or speak at a slower pace. The change can also be in energy rather than specific gestures. A reduction in movement, a quicker breathing pattern, or a shift in vocal tone can all indicate a departure from the baseline. One of the key skills in using a baseline effectively is patience. You can't rush the process of learning someone's normal behavior because too little observation increases the risk of misinterpretation. It might take multiple interactions to truly lock in a clear picture of their default patterns. During this period, you're not just watching, you're mentally cataloging these consistent behaviors so that when something changes, it stands out immediately. The setting in which you observe someone's baseline matters as well. Baseline behavior in a relaxed home environment might differ slightly from baseline behavior in a workplace, even if the person is still comfortable in both. People naturally adapt their demeanor depending on where they are and who they're with. This means you might need to establish multiple baselines for the same person in different contexts. For example, someone's office baseline might be more formal with fewer big gestures, while their social baseline could be much more expressive and casual. Once you can spot deviations from baseline, you gain a deeper insight into emotional changes as they happen. If you ask a question and notice an immediate deviation, maybe a normally still person starts fidgeting or a normally upbeat tone flattens, you've just spotted a live, nonverbal reaction. The beauty of this skill is that it works in real time, allowing you to adjust your approach in the moment. You can choose to explore the topic further, ease the tension, or simply note the change for future reference. The baseline concept also protects you from making snap judgments. Without it, you might misread perfectly normal behavior as suspicious or deceptive simply because it's different from your own norms. It reminds you that body language is deeply individual, and that the same gesture can mean entirely different things depending on who is making it. What looks like nervousness in one person could be calmness in another. It all depends on what's normal for them. Over time, this practice sharpens your observational skills and builds your ability to detect patterns. You stop relying on generic interpretations and start reading people as individuals. You stop assuming that a gesture means the same thing in everyone and begin to see the subtle, personalized shifts that reveal more about a person than any textbook definition could. By anchoring your observations in a person's baseline, you ensure that your conclusions are grounded in reality rather than guesswork, giving you a far more accurate understanding of what their body is truly communicating. Body language isn't just about frozen snapshots of posture or isolated gestures, it's about movement, pace, and the flow of energy that runs through a person's body as they interact with the world. Every step, every shift in position, and every adjustment in rhythm carries meaning. When you learn to read this energy in motion, you're not just watching for what someone is doing. You're tuning into how they're doing it, and that how often reveals far more than the what. Energy in motion starts the moment a person enters your space. The way they cross a threshold tells you something about their mindset before they've even spoken. Do they walk in with steady, deliberate steps, or do they move quickly as though trying to get something over with? A slow, measured entry can suggest confidence or calm, while hurried, clipped steps might reveal nervousness, impatience, or urgency. Even the sound of their steps can be telling. Light, almost silent movements can hint at a reserved or cautious nature, while heavier, more forceful steps may indicate determination or dominance. Once they're in the space, the direction and quality of their movements matter. Someone who moves with fluidity, turning their head smoothly, shifting weight evenly, and gesturing with natural arcs, often projects ease and control. In contrast, sharp, jerky motions may point to agitation or defensiveness. The key is not to see these movements in isolation, but to connect them with the surrounding environment and the tone of the interaction. Leaning is a subtle but powerful part of energy in motion. A person leaning slightly forward shows engagement, interest, or readiness to connect. Leaning back can signal relaxation, but it can also indicate withdrawal if paired with crossed arms or narrowed eyes. Side shifts in weight can reveal discomfort, anticipation, or impatience. The rhythm of these leans, whether they are gradual, sustained, or quick and reactive, adds another layer of interpretation. Hand movements are equally revealing. Large, sweeping gestures can project enthusiasm or assertiveness, while smaller, restrained motions may suggest caution or thoughtfulness. The speed of hand movement matters as well. Fast, repetitive motions often indicate restlessness or anxiety, while slow, intentional gestures reflect composure and clarity. A person's hands often act as an amplifier for their emotional state. The faster and less controlled they move, the higher the emotional charge behind them. Proximity changes are another element of energy in motion. People unconsciously adjust their distance based on comfort levels, interest, and trust. Someone who consistently steps closer during conversation may be signaling openness or dominance, depending on other cues. Someone who subtly steps back might be protecting their personal space or creating emotional distance. The pattern of these movements, whether they gradually close the gap or repeatedly retreat, helps reveal the underlying intent. Breathing patterns also integrate into this energy flow. Rapid, shallow breaths shift the energy outward, often signaling stress, urgency, or excitement. Slower, deeper breathing draws the energy inward, reflecting calmness or focus. While breathing is often subtle to observe, it changes the pacing of movement throughout the body, influencing posture, gestures, and even the tone of voice. Another aspect of energy in motion is how a person transitions between stillness and movement. Someone who pauses before speaking may be gathering thoughts, showing control over their energy, or attempting to measure their words. Someone who moves constantly without pausing may be driven by high emotional energy, whether positive, like enthusiasm, or negative, like anxiety. Watching the transitions between activity and stillness reveals the balance or imbalance of their state of mind. Synchrony between verbal and physical rhythm is also telling. When someone's words match the cadence of their movements, gesturing in time with speech, shifting posture naturally between sentences, it creates an impression of authenticity. But when there's a mismatch, such as rapid speech paired with minimal movement or slow, calm speech paired with erratic gestures, It signals a disconnect between what they're saying and what they're feeling. Reading energy in motion requires stepping back from rigid interpretations and looking at the flow of the entire interaction. You're not just checking off gestures in your mind, you're feeling the tempo of the person's presence. You're noticing when their energy spikes, when it dips, and what triggers those changes. You're watching how they physically respond to the conversation shifts, whether they lean in when you touch on a certain subject, or subtly retreat when a particular word is spoken. By focusing on the movement, pacing, and rhythm of someone's body language, you begin to see emotional shifts play out in real time. You stop relying solely on static cues and start interpreting the living, breathing patterns of interaction, giving you an immediate and nuanced understanding of where a person truly stands in any moment. Mastering the art of reading body language is not about catching people out or assigning instant labels. It's about developing a deeper awareness of the unspoken conversation happening around you at all times. From the silent first impression that shapes how we perceive others to the fleeting micro expressions that reveal unfiltered emotion, every detail adds a piece to the puzzle. Context ensures we interpret these signals accurately, while establishing a baseline allows us to notice meaningful changes in behavior. And when we tune into the energy in motion, we begin to see not just static gestures, but the living rhythm of a person's emotional state. Together, these skills transform the way you listen, connect, and respond. Because when you can read the truth beneath the words, you understand people, not just what they say, but who they really are.